The Constitution specifies that the grounds for impeachment shall be not partisan consideration, but evidence of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Since the Constitution vests the sole power of impeachment in the House of Representatives, it falls to the Judiciary Committee to understand even more precisely what high crimes and misdemeanors might mean in terms of the Constitution and the facts before us in our time.
As the House Impeachment Committee was closing in on the president, so were the press and the special prosecutor who had replaced Cox, Leon Jaworski. His legal pursuit of the tapes had led to the Supreme Court, which was coming to a final judgment on whether a president had the power to withhold evidence from a criminal proceeding.
Gentleman from California.
In the impeachment inquiry, the leader of the president's defense, Charles Wiggins of California, argued that the committee could not impeach unless it discovered a specific illegal act by the president, in effect, a smoking gun.
And I'm willing to concede that there's plenty of misdeeds by others, but unless we attribute them to the president by the evidence, they're not relevant to this case.
But many members, like Hamilton Fish, Republican from New York, believe the president need not have broken the law himself to be charged with failing to see that the law is upheld.
To faithfully execute the laws of our country does involve policing your lieutenants, and does involve an obligation to stop them when you see the course in which they're following. And for those who are looking for the smoking pistol, I'm afraid they're not going to find it because the room is too full of smoke.
The statement was made by Dean as follows. First, Gordon, he said, I want to know whether anybody in the White House was involved in this. And Liddy, the architect of all of this, replied, no, they were not. And that continued to be the state of the president's knowledge thereafter. If that's the kind of quality of evidence upon which this plot is hatched, this policy, let me say that it's ambiguous, it's confusing, it might be susceptible of different interpretations, but we know what the law is. You can't do it on that basis. If there is a benign interpretation pointing toward innocence, we must take it. We must take it.
Maybe there is a tie-in with the president. All right, there's 37 of you. Give me that information. Give it to 202 million Americans, because up to this moment, you haven't.
6 days after the break-in, Mr. Nixon ordered the CIA to limit the FBI's investigation. The CIA was told that it was the president's wish that the investigation stop with the 5 suspects that had been arrested. And in fact, the FBI's investigation was impeded and contained. On March 22nd, the president contemplated a number of courses of action. The first was, in his words, quote, I want you all to stonewall it. Let them plead the Fifth Amendment, cover up, or anything else if it'll save it, save the plan, close quotes. And in fact, 2 of Mr. Nixon's closest aides were indicted for perjury before the Senate Select Committee. And these are the directions the president gave to his aides for testifying before the grand jury, and I quote, just be damn sure you say, I don't remember. I can't recall.
I simply don't remember. I don't recall it.
I don't have that recollection.
I don't recall any such set of facts.
I'm not aware of it.
I'm not sure who or when.
I'm not quite certain.
I don't recall, excuse me, I don't recall the conversation. I can't say.
And in fact, Ehrlichman and Mitchell were indicted for committing perjury before the Watergate grand jury on the grounds that they stated they couldn't remember. It is clear to me that the president was approving or at least acquiescing in hush money payments amounting to over $400,000 to buy the silence of Watergate burglars.
And the thing that's so appalling to me is that the president, when this whole idea was suggested to him, didn't in righteous indignation rise up and say, get out of here, you're in the office of the President of the United States, How can you talk about blackmail and bribery and keeping witnesses silent? This is the presidency of the United States. And throw them out of his office and pick up the phone and call the Department of Justice and tell them there's an obstruction of justice going on. Someone's trying to buy the silence of a witness. But my president didn't do that.
One of the Oval Office conversations that so disturbed Republican Hogan was taped on March 21st, 1973. As the president and John Dean talked about money demanded by the burglars, the president said, "How much money do you need?" Well, Dean is heard to say, "I would say these people are going to cost $1 million over the next 2 years." And then there was a pause, and the president said, "We could get that." Well, a moment later, the president said, "You could get $1 million, and you could get it in cash. I know where it can be gotten." Later in the conversation, the president is heard to say, "But it would be wrong." Now, that's a phrase his supporters use to prove that he condemned paying hush money. His detractors disagree. They deplore any discussion of that kind in the White House. A wild celebration as Leon Jaworski emerges from the Supreme Court with an historic decision. The president's right to confidentiality is outweighed by his duty under the law to provide evidence in a criminal hearing. The president had been ordered to release the tapes. But until he did, the impeachment committee faced the same hard question, whether or not to vote impeachment on the evidence at hand and without the so-called smoking gun.
And I've searched within my heart and my conscience and searched out the facts. And when I test the facts, I find that the President of the United States, in accordance with the tests that I feel that we must confront, I find that the President must be found wanting. And so tomorrow, I shall urge, along with others, the adoption of articles of impeachment.
After the order to release the tapes, but before they were turned over by the White House, a preliminary vote. Those for impeachment voted aye.